This September will mark 10 years since Dark Souls was released. 10 years of this. As many of us know by now, Dark Souls has become one of the biggest gaming iconic series throughout the years, leading to the creation of its own genre. Yeah, Demon Souls came out a few years before Dark Souls, but the Souls-like phenomenon really picked up with Dark Souls and flourished throughout the 2010s. Fromsoftware themselves have created other games within the genre like Bloodborne or Sekiro, and a handful of other studios went on to develop their own take on the Dark Souls formula. Some examples being games like Neo, Lords of the Fallen, The Surge, Ashen, Code Vein, Mortal Shell, Remnant from the Ashes, and even Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Dark Souls' influence is felt all throughout the gaming landscape, and to think that it all began 10 years ago in a place called Lordran. In preparation for Elden Ring, I've decided to go back and play through all of Fromsoftware's titles. I'm starting with the Dark Souls games going in order, then it's on to Bloodborne, Sekiro, and then Demon Souls if I can even find a PS5. I'd really love to play it though, as it's the only Souls game I have yet to play. Elden Ring is about 6 months away, so I think I've given myself just enough time to run through all of them and take my time. I just finished up my playthrough of the first Dark Souls game, which is probably my 8th time beating the game at this point. I just always find myself going back to the first Dark Souls. There's always something so alluring about it, and when I booted it up a few weeks ago to start this playthrough, I was just immediately hooked. It'd been a few years since I'd last played Dark Souls 1, but all the muscle memory and the familiarity came rushing back right after the first hour, and I just couldn't put it down. So much so that I ended up doing an entire unplanned New Game Plus completion immediately following my first defeat of Gwyn. And I was so excited to beat the game that I forgot to do the DLC in my regular playthrough, which is something I'd never gotten around to until now. So my very first time beating Artorias, Manus, and Calamite were all on New Game Plus, where obviously they were much harder. But it also made for a much sweeter victory against these bosses, knowing that they were even tougher than if I played them in a regular playthrough. For my first playthrough back after years, I decided to go with a pretty standard character, one that was most familiar to me, a pyromancer who gets a great starting weapon, the hand axe, and the fireballs, which are very effective early on. I went with this class because the first time I played through Dark Souls, I chose pyromancer, and ever since then I've always kind of stuck with that kind of build throughout the entire series. It's very well rounded. I don't personally even go super deep into the pyromancy build. I only learn a few more pyromancy spells like great fireballs or great combustion, but I mainly stick to swinging a great sword or a great axe. But it is always nice to have pyromancy when you need it. When I fought my way out of the Undead Asylum and first landed in Firelink Shrine, I just had that feeling of home. Firelink feels so inviting, yet so mysterious. It's also one of the only 4 areas in the game that even has music playing. Firelink Shrine, Daughters of Chaos, Ash Lake, and Guinevere Bonfire. These are the only 4 locations in the game with music outside of boss fights. From Firelink, there's already so many pathways to choose from, but it's up to the player to figure out which is probably the right way. Some of the first enemies you come across might be the skeletons in the graveyard, but you quickly learn that maybe these guys are out of your level for now, so you try a different path. Maybe you end up in New Londo Ruins, fighting a few undead, and then getting absolutely wrecked by ghosts, and think, maybe I'll uninstall the game. Finally, you discover a more fitting path, and find the enemies to be a lot more on your level. But the idea of New Londo or the catacombs has been planted, and you think to yourself, I'll come back for you later. It's this kind of world design and mystery that keeps the player interested and intrigued, and I think Fromsoftware absolutely nailed it, teasing the player with all the possibilities early on, then setting them on a more suitable path. One of the best aspects of Dark Souls is its interconnectivity. The way in which almost every area loops back to each other through ladders, elevators, doorways, hidden paths. It's something almost unique to Dark Souls 1, as both Dark Souls 2 and 3 tend to have you more exploring outward across large landscapes, and especially in the case of Dark Souls 2, you might go through an area and just never see it again. Dark Souls 1, however, has you exploring every nook and cranny in hopes of finding that shortcut or hidden area inside its maze-like design. For this reason, Dark Souls 1 has a much bigger emphasis on exploration, getting comfortable in an area so as to master it, and then traversing back and forth between all the areas on foot, discovering those hidden pathways or illusionary walls that lead to various secrets. Eventually you'll be handed the Lord Vessel after beating these guys, so travel by foot isn't really required as much, but even with the Lord Vessel, exploration is still encouraged, as traveling back to those locations have you stumbling upon NPCs who are on a journey of their own and provide more story tidbits and lore surrounding the world. Some of them you'll meet in many different locations like Siegmeyer and Solaire. These guys are constantly moving throughout the world, and eventually you'll come to discover their fate. And if we're talking about Dark Souls, of course we're going to talk about bosses. I love fighting bosses in the Souls games. It's why I love the third game so much, as I think between the base game and the DLC, it has the most consistently great boss fights. But Dark Souls 1 also has some incredible bosses like Knight Artorias, Ornstein and Smough, Lord Gwyn. These fights are so well designed, and absolutely have big payoffs lore-wise. While these three fights are my personal favorite from a gameplay perspective, the other bosses never feel out of place. And what I mean by that is that in terms of the world of Dark Souls, the story, the world building, the bosses feel right where they belong. There's always a story or lore reason for why that enemy is there. There's nothing unintentional about Dark Souls world design. From just the mob enemies to the bosses, everything is well crafted. Hell, even people who quit the game before beating it are tied into the lore. Those NPCs who talk about the poor souls that go hollow, well, those poor souls who go hollow are those who give up and give in before linking the fire. Every mechanic is intelligently designed. Unlike its sequel Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 1 managed to strike a perfect balance between atmosphere, world building, and difficulty. Again, the enemy placement and level design is very intentional and cohesive. If you get overwhelmed, it might be because you messed up somewhere. Whereas the sequel, Dark Souls 2, just throws excessive mobs at you constantly and has far too many cheap deaths and confusing enemy placements, and it just feels like it's trying to punish you with no real reason. It just doesn't feel organic. Level design feels strange and frankly doesn't make any sense. Now, Dark Souls 2 isn't a bad game, but it's missing almost everything that made Dark Souls 1 so special. For the longest time I'd thought, how did they nail it out of the park with Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and even Dark Souls 3? But Dark Souls 2 feels so off with its mechanics, combat, bosses, and world design. And I finally received an answer. Now I know this information's been out there for a while, but I only recently came across this information. And that is that Dark Souls 2 was actually made by the B team at Fromsoftware. Miyazaki had very little, if anything, to do with Dark Souls 2's creation, as he and his team were working on Bloodborne at the time. There was a whole heap of development, project leads, and redesign issues with Dark Souls 2 that led to what we have now. And knowing all this information now, all of the out of place and frankly poor design decisions in Dark Souls 2 all make so much sense. Again, I don't think Dark Souls 2 is an overall bad game. There's a few things I really liked, most of which are in the DLCs, but it doesn't feel like a Miyazaki Souls game because it isn't. And for that reason, I think it lacks what makes a Souls game so special. That intentional design. Dark Souls has it, Bloodborne has it, and hopefully Elden Ring will have that incredible feel that makes us return to these games time and time again. I've been thinking about doing a new character style series or a let's play of Dark Souls on the channel, so let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in seeing something like that. And also let me know your thoughts on the Dark Souls series or any Souls-like game you've played. I'm always curious to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.